Welcome to Mintel's Little Conversation podcast.
Welcome to Mintel's Little Conversation, where our experts bring you fresh ideas and new perspectives on how consumers eat, drink, shop, groom and think. I'm your host, Andrew Davidson, based in New York, and today we'll be talking about the state of cryptocurrency. Bitcoin is down. We are in a so-called crypto winter. We will discuss what this is and what it means for consumers and brands, as well as the outlook for the future of this industry in a volatile environment. Now, we've recently done episodes on the metaverse and NFTs, so this is really part 3 in that trilogy. And so I'd encourage anyone who's interested in this area to listen to those episodes. So joining me to discuss this topic today, I have, I think, the best guests possible. I'm delighted to welcome Emma Todd to the pod from Toronto in Canada. Emma has an incredible bio when it comes to cryptocurrency. She is CEO of MMH Technology Group, the chair of the Canadian Blockchain Consortium's Mining Committee, and a board member of the Canadian Blockchain Consortium. She has spoken at Parliament in Canada. She's spoken at the United Nations and shared the stage with heads of state, UN ambassadors, Al Gore, Ed Snowden, members of the US Congress and Senate, and more. And she was really recently speaking at Davos, which blew my mind. So Emma, we're honored. Welcome to the pod.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's so funny that you say you're honored. I've known you forever.
So not only are we blessed with Emma's insights today, but I'm delighted to welcome Mintel's resident cryptocurrency and blockchain expert and director of marketing strategy, Biota Macdonald. Biota recently wrote a fascinating post covering 5 misconceptions about crypto, which you can actually read right now on the Mintel blog. Welcome, Biota.
Thank you, Andrew. So excited to be here, and especially with you, Emma.
I'm excited for this, Biota. We have great conversations.
Excellent. All right. Well, so Emma, like you say, we've known each other for a while. Long before you were invited to speak at the UN and Davos, you're actually a Mintel client working in banking in Toronto. So perhaps you made a career change. You made a pivot in your career at a time when, cryptocurrency was in its early days. It's a fascinating journey. I mean, perhaps we could start. Could you take us back and perhaps tell us a bit about how you got into cryptocurrency and how you got to this point?
Yeah, well, I was in banking, and Andrew, I've been a banker my entire career since I got out of school, and it was interesting, but I was looking to make a move into fintechs. It just sounded so interesting when everybody was talking about that, and so my friend of mine had a party, and I said to her, I'm looking to get into FIs, and she said, well, what about Bitcoin? What about blockchain? I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. It sounds like a foreign language. And she said, you should come to this conference that I'm sponsoring. And so I went to the conference, and this was back in 2016. And I had all the top people that were in the cryptocurrency world. They were all speaking there, and I was just so enthralled by it. And also I noticed that sitting beside me, you had Ernst & Young, you had PwC, you had EY, the Department of Homeland Security was there. They had come from Washington, D.C., because you didn't have that many conferences back then. And I thought, these people know something that bankers don't. And I was so enthralled by it. I thought, I need to do this.
Something's going on here. Yeah.
Something's going on.
Where was this? Which city was this in Toronto?
This is in Toronto. This is April? No, I forget when. April, May, 2016. It was absolutely amazing. And I was just blown away by it and thought that I need to do this full time and tell everybody about it. But of course, the majority of my friends were bankers, and they all thought I was crazy, and I do mean crazy. And so they didn't really pay attention to me. And back then, to put into perspective, Bitcoin was at $400. So nobody really knew anything, but Deloitte really, they knew. They had a team that was working on it. They kept inviting me to come and talk to somebody about, on their team about Bitcoin and blockchain every month. I would just walk up to Deloitte, because I didn't live that far away, and talk to somebody there, about 5 or 6 people once a month about blockchain and what it was doing and what was going on in the industry. And I thought, someday people will really get it. But for the meantime, I'm really loving what I do, and I'm enthralled every day. And I'm meeting all these really smart people who are really making me think. So they all thought I was crazy in 2016. And then in 2017, when Bitcoin went to 2017, 2018, when Bitcoin started going up and it went to almost $20,000, suddenly I was a visionary.
Right.
Suddenly I was a visionary. It was 2018, actually.
So it sounds like you starting out almost as an educator, explaining to people what it is and what the opportunity is.
Yeah. So what happened was I was basically doing something I don't really recommend, but building the car while driving it. So I didn't know very much about Bitcoin and blockchain, but I was really good at strategy. I was really good at marketing. And so people would hire me to help them do the strategy for their company and do the marketing for their company. And you need to know about the products. So I was spending all my time just diving in. I was reading Twitter several hours a day. And that's kind of like drinking from like Niagara Falls. It's brutal, all this information coming at you. But it was really knowledgeable. And I got to meet a lot of people in this space that I wouldn't be able to get as close to today, simply because back then they weren't famous. They were just people just like you and me, just really trying to, find out more. Like they believed in what they were doing. And so they really wanted to spread the word. And so I was able to say to them, you said this, but I'm not sure if I understand. Can we talk about this later? And they'd be like, yeah, sure. Just WhatsApp me. Here's my number. That's not happening today at all, right? But so I was able to build up a really good Rolodex, and they all became really good friends. And that made things a little bit easier for me then. I don't think I can do that today.
Was there one key moment where you thought, you mentioned how, you sort of evolved into this sort of visionary, sort of predicting this future industry. Was there sort of one key moment? I know that at one point, you ended up speaking at the United Nations. Like, was there sort of one key part that you can point to where it was really, you realized, you thought, hang on, this is really taking off?
Funny enough, it was the United Nations, because my family, they supported me, but they really didn't understand what I was doing. And I know they thought I was crazy. And then I was able to say, listen, we're having something at the United Nations. We're going to be talking about how blockchain can relate to sustainable development goals. And everybody kind of went quiet. And I said, if you want to come and hear me talk, or if you want to come to the United Nations, let me know. And they said, yes, we want to come. Of course. And it was really nice to have my dad there. And my family flew in from Barbados. I had family, and from Toronto came. And my family in New York, they also showed up. So it was really great for them to see that I was no longer crazy. I started. I'm
sure they must have been must have been so proud of you. Are they all invested in Bitcoin now, or no?
Yeah, in fact, I love it when they tell me what's happening. Well, Emma, what do you think about this? Well, I'm like, A by ABC. I don't know about that, because I'm like, oh, you're telling me? But it's really cute. I like that they're very invested in it. And I loved it when people were like, oh, well, what about blockchain? And before I could answer, my dad turned around and gave me a really good explanation about what blockchain was. And I was like, okay.
He's got it. Well. He's got it. Well, what is interesting that, so, when it does seem that the people who are into it are, very passionate about it. I mean, Biota, what was the spark for you that got you interested?
Yeah. So I think it's funny. I was reflecting back on this. I actually lost a bet with my husband that involved him as a victor being able to invest some of our money into crypto. And this was in early 2018. So I figured that if I had stake in the game, it would make sense to learn a little bit more about it. And the more I learned, the more I realized what a game-changing technology that the blockchain is, with huge implications across all industries and impacting people from all walks of life. So that was just really exciting, was my first foray. And Emma, to your point about getting your family to invest, I know one of my, I think, big accomplishments from last year was getting my mother to invest. Anyone who has immigrant parents, I think, understands there's a level of risk averseness when it comes to investing. And so for me, I think that's a sign that crypto is here to stay, is the fact that my mom is invested in crypto now. But I think it's funny thinking about crypto in terms of Mintel as well, is that I was following crypto for fun up until last year. And then I joined Mintel about 8 months ago and was hired to focus on financial services and insurance. But I really realized there was a huge opportunity for what we could offer our clients. I think in my Mintel interview, I had made an offhand comment about being interested in crypto, and it didn't really go anywhere. But actually, we were able to tackle crypto for the first time this year in a thought leader presentation at the start of this year. I really want to tackle the metaverse next. And I have a monthly crypto blog series as well. So feel free to check that out. But yeah, just really excited for the crypto content that's to come and the ways that we can help our clients understand this space and how to take advantage of the opportunity.
I'll admit that I am a no coiner, so someone who doesn't own crypto, and I'm still quite skeptical. But we'll get into that a little bit more. But anyway, let's set the stage. So anyone sort of paying attention to the news right now will hear this term crypto winter, and that's something that we're reading about. So what is the crypto winter, and what is the general state of cryptocurrency?
So crypto winter occurs when the price of crypto, and it's primarily driven by Bitcoin. If Bitcoin catches a cold, everybody else does too. And so when it loses value, a significant amount of value, then people say it's in crypto winter. And the first time I heard that term was actually August 2018. They said, and it started to go down, and I was talking to a client, and he said, yeah, everyone's calling this crypto winter. And I was like, it's August, it's sunny. What? Yeah, sure enough. Yep, that was crypto winter. And it lasted honestly until March 2020, right around then. So the correlation between that is, and it dropped. Actually, crypto winter technically started January 2018, if you want to be very, very accurate, because Bitcoin went up to almost 20,000 in December, and it started to go down, but it went down gradually. So people didn't really realize until August, and you're like, oh, this thing is not going back up. So whereas right now we have a solid drop, a steep, like off a cliff drop, back then it was a little bit more gradual. It was pretty bad. It went from roughly 20,000 down to 3,600. So that was pretty low. So that's when I'm like, guys, and I learned from that one. So this one, I'm a little bit more laissez-faire because I've been preparing for it, because I knew it was going to go back down. It just wasn't, just based on the history, I knew it was going to go back. You hope that it doesn't, but it is going to. But this one's a lot different. And I think it's driven by market conditions. So, for example, we have inflation, we have a recession coming. There's a lot more institutional money in crypto. And so that sort of drives it right now. And it's a lot of institutional money. So before it was more just, random people speculating and buying what they wanted to. And so back then it acted differently. Now it's a whole different ballgame. It's
interesting because obviously with a bear market that we're in right now, it's when it's sort of gets called a bear market when it's down 20%. Is there sort of a definition, or is it just it kind of just generally gets termed a crypto winter when it just starts declining for a long period of time?
Yeah, there is no definition, but yeah, when it starts declining significantly, that's when they call it the crypto winter. So I think we're down 73% right now. Is that right? Or it was 53% before, but I'm not quite sure the actual number. Yeah. But it's down. So to put in perspective, it was at 60,000, and now it's down to I think 20. Yeah, but it is what it is. Yeah, I always tell people before you invest, make sure you understand what it is that you're doing. Make sure you the money that you invest is the money that that you're okay with losing. The money that if someone set it on fire in front of you, you're like, what are you doing? That's unfortunate. But it's unfortunate, but you're not screaming because you haven't you can still pay the mortgage, you can still pay your car loan, things like that, right? So I really tell people that before you invest in anything that is this volatile, this risky, do your homework and make sure you know what you're doing.
So Emma, so you were recently at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, and where cryptocurrency was, I believe, was a key topic of discussion. Obviously, this is an annual event attended by business and world leaders. It's obviously renowned. What was it like being there?
I think I'm a little. I've been there before, so for me this time,
oh, I see.
My first time there, I was just like, oh my gosh, right? Like I was just wide-eyed and just surprised at everything that was going on around me. It's very well run. The first time I went, it was during the winter and it was cold. It was really, really cold. But
as opposed to the crypto, not the crypto winter, the actual winter.
It was January in Switzerland, and it's actually a little ski town that normally holds 3,000, but then during the middle of Davos, it holds 30,000 people. And the conversation was just mind blowing. It was really astounding. These people were all there because they wanted to make the world a better place. They weren't necessarily driven by money. They were driven by the need to do something good for another human being. And that really just galvanized me. It made me think, okay, Emma, you can do good for the economy. You can do good for other people. And because I'm not going to kid you, I'm going to be honest here. I came from banking. I like people, but I had a bit of a money slant to things. but when I did Davos, I really started to think, I can do my part to make things better for people. And that's when you started seeing me do a little bit more things, like volunteering and doing things to try and make an impact. So I chaired Girls in Tech. I was the chair for Blockchain for Impact that worked with the United Nations. I chair for the mining committee and the fintech committee for the Canadian Blockchain Consortium, which is the largest nonprofit here in Canada, just because I think that one of the challenges that blockchain has is that people don't understand it. So we try to get the word out there and we have courses and things like that and sort of explain things to people. And we really kind of go out there and we try to advocate for the space. But it all started at Davos. It really made me think I can do better. And everybody's so incredibly smart. Oh my gosh, jaw dropping. And the crazy part is they're just walking around like you and me. They're just walking, and you're like on the street, like, oh, look.
The security hiding in the side streets?
Yeah, I mean, there's security there. But for the most part, they're all just walking on the streets just like you and me. I'm not kidding. It's quite shocking.
Fascinating. That's fascinating. So obviously you were there. The discussion was around. There's a lot of discussion around cryptocurrency. Right now, there are currently 19,000 cryptocurrencies in existence. Many of the executives at Davos reportedly see that as unsustainable, and some believe that the crypto winter is a good thing, as it will remove. And I'm quoting from a CNBC article. It will remove bad actors. What's your take?
I bet CNBC article was written by Mackenzie. I know her. She's not wrong, or they're not wrong. So whenever there's something bad, sometimes something good can come out of it. And this one with crypto winter, it is accurate. It removes some of the bad actors, people that are just driven by money, that are driven by greed, people that are there to sort of con and do things that are harmful to the space. That is what hopefully crypto winter will drive out, because there are people there that they don't have as much money anymore. People aren't flocking to it. So what happens is, and it sounds bad, but it's true, every few years when crypto winter comes, it's like a cleansing. It gets rid of all the bad actors. And so that's one good thing that comes out of this.
Yeah, I mean, there's the crypto winter. There's obviously a lot of negative news around cryptocurrency right now, hitting the headlines. I'm just going to I'll just going to read off three that they've been really sort of dominating headlines recently. The Terra USD Luna, the algorithmic stablecoin crashed, proving that not all stable coins are stable. Crypto lender Celsius froze withdrawals, damaging the reputation of the industry. The bankruptcy filing of the hedge fund Three Arrows Capital, one of the biggest crypto hedge funds with, of course, investments across the industry. Obviously, these are all events that sort of damage the reputation of the industry. Which of these events would you say is the most significant in terms of its impact in your view, and why?
Funnily enough, Celsius is bad, but the more I think about it, Terra Luna is actually worse. Because a lot of people invested in Terra, a lot of companies invested in Terra. And when Terra filed for bankruptcy, those companies, they were heavily invested in Terra. And what's happening is they're unable to suddenly pay their loans. So that's actually what happened with 3AC. They're not able, as a result of Terra. And a lot of companies are unable to pay their loans because they had a lot of money invested in Terra. So one company that was able actually to sustain the challenges that they faced when Terra went bankrupt is Galaxy. Galaxy, through Mike Novogratz, had $400 million invested in Terra Luna. That's a lot of money, But because they had significant assets, they were able to withstand that. Not everybody else was. And so that's the problem with a lot of these companies. And that's the difference between crypto winter then and crypto winter now. What we're seeing is because of what happened with Terra Luna, a lot of companies, they're either barely making their payments or they're not able to make their payments at all. And then what happens is after they start to default, then companies start to, require payment from them. And then that's what we're seeing where they're going bankrupt. So I think that as month over month happens and there are going to be more companies that declare bankruptcy, when you trace it back to what started it, it's going to be Terra. But Terra started, and Terra was like death by 1,000 cuts, but quite frankly, they were shorted.
Yeah, I would agree that for sure that I think Luna was the first domino that fell that really kicked off a lot of the other turmoil that we're seeing in the crypto world right now. But just because, Emma, you took Luna, I think I'll tackle Celsius because I think Celsius is a really interesting example, especially for brands. Celsius, I think of it as kind of a what's happening with them as a Lehman Brothers moment for crypto. So they really kind of position themselves as a crypto bank. They're one of crypto's biggest lenders. They made depositing with them really appealing through high yields, up to 18%. So yields are kind of like the interest rate that you would get for depositing money with a traditional bank. But I think with Celsius, they're not decentralized finance. They're not DeFi. It's what the crypto world calls CeFi, centralized finance. Namely, there's still a central entity in control of your money who, as a customer, you're trusting to do right by you. So CeFi is really easy to distinguish because they need to abide by know your customer laws. They'll check your ID when you sign up, things like that. And by nature, they're just very centralized and they can do things like freeze withdrawals, which is what Celsius did. And I think part of the lesson for brands here is that Celsius really engaged with a lot of rather deceptive and misleading marketing. If you read their white paper on their website, they talk about how banking is broken, and then they position themselves as a crypto bank, making it sound like your money is safe, that you're going to earn this high yield, that there's little to no risk that you're going to lose your money or be able to withdraw it. And they really built off of that trust that comes with the term bank. They also talked about themselves as, or they use the term the 99%, not the 1%. Almost as if they're taking money from legacy institutions like hedge funds and kind of helping out the retail consumer. So they really commandeered a lot of these DeFi terms that the crypto world and an audience that really favors decentralization really engages well with. And so they built off of some of that marketing language and that messaging. And I think that they're really a lesson for the consumer that there's really due diligence that needs to happen. Just because a company says that, that they are XYZ, that does not necessarily mean that you can trust that it doesn't necessarily mean that you can trust all of those assumptions. And I think for brands, it's just really important to educate and be very upfront with what you are offering. And it's a way that brands can differentiate themselves if you do offer a crypto product, to be more specific and kind of establish that loyalty with your customers. And with Celsius right now, I think what's interesting is FTX actually reported considering buying them out and then chose not to move forward after taking a look at their financials. So really, I think there was a lot of over leveraging, taking on a lot more risk than they really should have, borrowing money and investing it, and really not taking into account that crypto works in cycles and that there are inevitable market downturns, and people in crypto should know that and should prepare for that. And Celsius didn't do that. And I think it's unfortunate, all of the, especially retail investors who've been impacted.
So a couple of things I want to throw in there. One of the things I'm interested to see is what the SEC says, because the SEC came out with a mandate in June 2018. Because I, as you know, did some marketing, they advised people that if there was going to be deceptive marketing, they were going to charge them like the CMO. And so I'm curious to actually see what their actual marketing was, because the SEC, they've been pretty vigilant when it comes to crypto. I mean, obviously you can't get to everything, but Celsius is kind of up there in the news, right? They've been doing stuff for some time. So one would have thought that they would have gone after Celsius instead of some of these other more innocuous cryptocurrencies. So I'm kind of interested to hear what their take is, because no doubt they're going to be doing some investigation now, or they probably already have started. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out of that. And the fact that they declared bankruptcy yesterday. It'll be interesting to see what happens, because they had paid off the loan, but we know that, or we surmise that they had paid the loan off with customers' deposits, right? So I'm sure, Biota, you've heard that term, and it's a new one for you, Andrew. If you do decide to invest in cryptocurrency, not your keys, not your, not your funds. So what they're basically saying is when you invest in cryptocurrency, you get private keys. It's kind of like a wallet. If you tell people what the numbers are, what your keys are, then it's not really your money, right? Because you're not managing it. You don't own it. Somebody else can manage it, right? Or you may own it, but somebody else can manage it. The rule of the game is to just don't do that. Never, ever do that. It's a little bit more risky. And yes, it's your own. If you lose those keys, you're in trouble. And we all have stories about that. I have stuff in my phone that I'm still trying to find. But don't trust it with a third party. That's the name of the game. Just don't do it.
Yeah, you touch on some of the implications. And what are the broader implications then of all of this sort of the crypto winter and all of this negativity? How damaging is this?
I mean, to just throw this out here, it's pretty damn. It's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. I'm not going to kid you. We expect more, and sometimes we don't get it. And so you need to be vigilant. And while the government is there to help you, because you're paying your taxes and that's their job, it's also dependent or incumbent upon you to do your own research to make sure that it's not a scam, that it's worth it. So while you get all that nice, shiny, pretty marketing, flip and look at the terms and conditions. That's the most important thing. Or scroll down, look at the terms and conditions, read that. All the pretty marketing is just like something to catch your eye, but the terms and conditions is what's going to lock you in, right? So read that, and if it seems too good to be true, your parents are right. If it seems to be good to be true, it generally is. Like that kind of yield is just crazy, right? And so always keep that in mind. There's very, very, very few things in life that is literally as good as it seems. There's often some sort of blood, sweat, and tears that goes in for some of the early people, but it's generally not that easy.
And trust, of course, is such a key component of anything to do with money. And, you know, when you mentioned Celsius Biota and you talk about, you know, not being able to withdraw funds, I mean, yeah, trust is evaporated. And obviously probably impossible to regain.
Exactly. I think with retail investors who have never really experienced a bear market, and we had a lot of new folks join into crypto in this last bull market. And so I think it's a good lesson, a really tough and unfortunate lesson, I will say. After the crash of Luna, for instance, there were reports of suicides and depression from investors who had really overinvested and lost everything, their life savings, and had been really drawn by the high yield. I think the Terra Labs had been offering 20% yield, which was really high for a stable coin. Typically, those yields are standard to kind of attract investors early on for other types of crypto, but not for stable coins. And I think for the lesson, unfortunately, with a lot of what's happened is that it's really caused a domino effect on especially crypto native institutions. There's been a lot of clear losers, ranging from, you know, things that we've already discussed, filing bankruptcy, rescinding job offers, which you may have seen in the news, reducing headcount. But then also a lot of clear winners. So crypto exchanges, FTX and Binance are two that are still very well capitalized. So FTX is really big in the US. Binance is bigger globally and much bigger in Europe than in the US. But I think there's a good lesson to be learned from how those two companies have managed their funds and really prepared for the inevitable downturn in the cycle. So even during this crypto winter, they've been announcing partnerships and even sharing that they're still hiring, which is kind of in sharp contrast to some of the other companies that are suffering.
So a couple of things. We have to be honest here. So the leaders of Binance, so CZ, Shankar Zen, and the leader of FTX, Sam Bankman-Fried, they are exceptionally brilliant. They are not the average person. They are next level. And they are brilliant at a very young age. In fact, actually, to be fair, CZ is in his 30s. But yes, you can follow them. FTX sort of appeared out of nowhere, but they're doing very well, and they have a lot of money. That's the difference between them and a lot of other companies. They have an insane amount of money behind them. That being said, I love what SBF said. He's like, listen, we didn't go out there and hire like crazy during the bull run. We stuck with what we had, and now we're very nicely positioned during the bear market, which is really interesting because in Miami, they got the FTX Arena. So if you can, pay for sponsorship for the FTX Arena and still have a lot of money after, it's an insane amount of money they have. So it's the point where, and it's really kind of lovely that they were doing it as well as Binance. When companies are still doing it in the crypto sector that are not doing well, they're going to them and asking their advice and hoping to get a loan or some sort of partnership with them. And that's what's happening. That's what should happen when you're a leader in an industry. You do what you can. Andrew, this reminds me of 2007, 2008, when all the banks were going to, and the feds were asking JP Morgan Chase for help and Bank of America because they were the two largest banks. And they're like, we need you to help these other banks that are going to fail if you don't help. And that's literally what we're seeing, just in a different industry 15 years later. A little bit more than 15, but yeah, literally that's what we're seeing.
That's a great connection, Emma.
That's a great connection. And it makes me also connect, there's 2008, but it makes me think about the sort of the dot-com bubble, which burst. And then, you had the stronger companies coming through like Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a similar kind of parallel?
This sounds bad. I was a little too young for the dot-com bubble, but I do know that, the ones that were strong then are stronger now. So like everyone talks about Amazon, right? Amazon apparently went down during that time because they're busy just trying to build. And then they became the powerhouse that they are today. What I take out of that, and what we all of us who are in this ecosystem who've been doing this for quite some time, is if you can survive a bear market, you're very well positioned for the bull market. So the bear market is really where you build. You do all the things that people aren't necessarily equipped to do. And then in the bull market, you pay off all your debts and things like that, and you are sailing. But that's really the important thing that a lot of us are taking out of that.
All right, so let's shift gears a little bit, because I know, Emma, you mentioned that you were on the board of tokens.com?
Yes.
And you sit on the board, on a couple of boards, and I know that you're one of only a few women of color who hold board level positions, which is amazing. So what has it been like being a woman of color in the crypto industry?
For being a woman of color, for some people, they need to see someone who looks like them. I come from Jamaica, where I already see a lot of people who look like me. And so it wasn't that hard for me when I came to Canada, sort of just kind of keep going. But for some people who haven't seen that, they sort of need it. So I'm happy to be that person that they see that kind of goes out and does things. But for me, I think, and it's also a bit of a mindset, I think the road less traveled is the more interesting one, and that's how you can make your mark. So if you give me the choice between the road well traveled and the road less traveled, I'm going to take less traveled every time. I'm going to learn something new and come back and I can educate the masses. And I like to be a trailblazer. I don't necessarily like to follow the pack. It's a mindset. And sometimes you need that because it is tough. I'm not going to kid you. Like, I'm fairly well known now, but in the beginning, they were like, "Who's this lady? What's she doing here?" I was very fortunate that because the Canadian ecosystem is so small, a lot of the guys knew me. And if you go anywhere to any conference in the world, there's always going to be a healthy number of Canadians there. So they would be like, Emma, like I talk about, I went to Bermuda and I knew nobody when I walked into this restaurant, and four guys were like, Emma, you're here. And it wasn't my Canadian contingent. And so I know that wherever I go in the world, I'm going to find Canadians. It happened to me in Malta. I was in Malta. I went to Malta for it was the largest blockchain conference at the time in 2018. Yep, I was in Malta. There were 3 Canadians. Emma, I'm like, hey.
We love our friends up in Canada.
Yeah, we are literally everywhere.
Yeah, Emma, I really appreciate the ways you've been blazing a trail for the rest of us. And I think I really resonate too with the education part of it for me, that I think as a woman of color myself, trying to learn more about this space, I think I feel the same kind of similar burden to know even more than, and kind of give myself that additional credibility. And I think part of that comes from crypto really drawing on a lot of industries that do suffer from a lack of diversity, like tech, engineering, finance, retail investing also really skews male. So, and we know that workplaces and industries only benefit from more diversity. So crypto as a really highly technical field can be really inaccessible for a beginner who's just interested. It's also one of the reasons I'm involved in a group called Women of Color in Emerging Tech, where I volunteer to create educational presentations to help the group learn together. So being involved in crypto education with that group and at work has really challenged me to understand the technology better, so that I can explain things from kind of layer zero. And especially since I don't have a technical background, I'm in marketing as well. I think that gives me unique perspective in how to simplify some of these really complex ideas and make this space more accessible and welcoming for people of all backgrounds.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah, right. I find when you're in marketing, you have to take these things people just throw at you and like, okay, how can I break it down to it being really easily, like more easily understood? And so, I'm always listening to people and see how they phrase things. I'm like, oh, that's a good way of phrasing things. Let me borrow that. Another thing that I do is what I found, and this is a little bit weird, but I'll tell you guys anyway. Like I try to listen to podcasts and of people who are inspiring and that have mannerisms that I think are really good and just a good way of explaining things. And I try to mimic that. So funnily enough, who has a really good way of explaining things? Christine Lagarde. She doesn't like crypto, so I'm always fond of what she says, but she's a really good way of explaining things.
Well, I will say that you're both incredibly, inspiring role models, and of course, generations of women, coming through. Someone has to take, for change to happen. Someone has to take the lead, and you're doing that. So both of you, which is incredibly inspiring. So I think actually there's quite a good segue actually as we're talking about that, because from a consumer perspective, it's predominantly men that own cryptocurrency. Is actually more predominantly more likely to be millennial men. So according to Mintel data, 15% of Americans own cryptocurrency, but that number rises to nearly 1 in 3 among millennial men. And furthermore, my understanding is that that most of the value of cryptocurrency is held by a small number of investors. And we find that most Americans consider cryptocurrency to be too risky. So, thinking about, the future of cryptocurrency, how bullish are you that more consumers, different types of consumers, will eventually embrace it? You've both spoken sort of passionately about your families embracing it, but how bullish are you about that, expansion? And if so, how will it happen?
I'm very bullish on crypto. I do believe that crypto is the future. I think my critique of the traditional finance world is that it's slow and often reluctant to innovate. But that also makes sense because you're dealing with a large amount of money and customers and regulation. And so to some degree, that's understandable, but it does open up a lot of opportunity for disruptors like fintechs and now crypto to really challenge the space. So I feel really great about the opportunities that crypto can kind of bring to the world and the ways that traditional finance can be pushed to evolve. I do think that one of the things that will help adoption is institutional involvement, which we did see a lot of in the last bull market. And part of that is also just with how nascent of an industry that crypto is. A lot of the interfaces are a bit clunky. They require much more technical background or a lot of in-depth knowledge to really navigate. And so the role that institutions and brands can play is really making this more widely accessible, creating that really nice front end experience with maybe blockchain and DeFi on the back end. And I really think that's where the space will go in the future as the cycle kind of comes around.
I agree. I think right now that, I'm always bullish on crypto. I just am. I think it's the way of the future. I will say, and I do believe this, that it's not for everybody, and it's not for and that's fine. I don't necessarily expect my 85-year-old grandfather, to sort of adopt it. He's the kind of person that's going to prefer to go into the bank, go into the bank and do that. And so I do believe that there is something out there for everyone. The challenge is that banks are watching these things sort of eat into their profits, and they don't like that. And so they're fighting for their way of life, and I understand. I think that evolving, like the financial landscape is going to change. It's going to change with a certainty that I would only convey on death and taxes. It's going to change. The question is how long and what percentage is going to adopt versus stay. And even if it is not Bitcoin, it's going to be something else. If it's not cryptocurrency in general, it's going to be something else. Why? Because there are some definite challenges that we have right now with banking. And I've said this before and I'll say it again. The reason that I got into crypto was because I was just absolutely horrified by the fees that they use when people are doing remittances, right? And so it used to be, I think, $80, and it still is to some extent in Canada. They charge $80 for fees. And then when crypto started getting popular and the remittance market, which is a very big market, I think it's like $4 billion, if not a lot more. They now have it, some banks have it where, the fees for remittances are, they've waived them. But here's the catch. When banks are accepting remittances, they still charge you. So for bank transfer, you still get charged. If you're not getting charged, then the recipient's getting charged in some way, shape, or form, right? Whereas you can simply do a Bitcoin or a cryptocurrency transfer for, less than $2 to $5, So, and that's for a large amount of money. For 500,000, it was like $2.50 or something like that. And a little bit more, I can't quite remember what it was. Well, let me not tell that one, but just for doing $1 million transfers, they can incur maybe $10, depends on what you're doing. But like, it's really just, it's not that. It's definitely a heck of a lot cheaper than it is doing it through the banks, And
I think the transparency too with cross-border transactions is just such an upgrade. When I've had to send money overseas to family, it feels like my money goes into a black box. It's left my bank account. It hasn't gone into their bank account. Where is it? Nobody knows. We just trust that in a couple of days, hopefully it goes where they say it's going to go. Whereas with the blockchain, you can instantly see the transactions being processed. It takes minutes with some variations depending on what blockchain you're using. But I think that transparency feels like such a huge upgrade to be able to see what's going on and have those lower fees. Yeah,
I totally agree.
So we've talked a lot about those are great points, and we've spoken today a lot about this in the context of the market volatility and the crypto winter. One of the other sort of critiques about cryptocurrency in general is the impact on the environment. I just wanted to sort of just touch on that, particularly. This is a question really for you, Emma. What do you say to those who just suggest that cryptocurrency is bad for the environment?
Is incorrect. You do have aspects that are definitely not environmentally friendly, but overall, the majority of cryptocurrency that's mined is 58% renewable. So you have to ask yourself, who would benefit from coming out with a negative view of cryptocurrency and say this? And, lobbyists are paid a lot of money these days. And if you sort of look at who the top 3 lobbyists are, I'm pretty sure you're going to find that banks are up there. Just saying. Yeah, I threw it out there.
Interesting.
Yeah, I said it. So, yeah, I said it. But, so I spend a fair amount of my time battling this and letting people know that it is actually not correct. When you look at the type, I think Bitcoin and also other cryptocurrencies, they're mining, it's 0.16 of the global economy, 0.16. To put in perspective, video games is, I think, 0.20. So you spend more energy on playing video games, you spend more energy on Christmas lights, North American Christmas lights, not worldwide. North American Christmas lights spend more energy, but no one's talking about that. Everyone's really focused on Bitcoin, and guess what? We're out there making, trying to change the financial landscape, as well as provide work for individuals. And so we're really trying our best to do a good thing. Are we getting pushback? Definitely, but this is what we signed up for, and we'll definitely continue to do that. But it really isn't what you've heard. The narrative is incorrect.
I think you need to be careful where you're getting your news from. There's a lot of people who talk about the blockchain or talk about crypto and have a very specific perspective on crypto. So I always encourage people to get your news from a variety of sources. And so I think the fact that mainstream media typically tends to harp on crime and environmental impact and volatility a lot is not the bigger picture of crypto and what's going on.
Okay, brilliant. Well, so I mean, we talked about the environment. A lot of this is, like you say, so the narrative is quite negative in general, specifically related to the volatility, related to the environment. This is really the final question for you both, as we sort of come to the end of our time together here. It's been a fascinating conversation, but I want to ask you both what you're most excited about when it comes to the future of cryptocurrency and the broader industry.
I am excited about a lot of things in crypto, but I think for me, especially working in and having a lot of financial services clients, I think for me, the DeFi, decentralized finance world is most exciting. And just really the possibilities that it opens up. And even globally, that now people who traditionally have not had access to a sound financial system that they could trust in are now able to tap into crypto-backed loans. And if you own an NFT, you can get a loan using that as collateral as well. So I think there's a lot of possibilities for the way that industry specifically is developing. And if we look at more broadly what's happened with the crypto winter as well, a lot of the downturn has impacted the CeFi centralized finance companies, and DeFi has actually largely functioned as it's supposed to. So CeFi companies are the ones that are, filing for insolvency, having all these difficulties, while actually a lot of their investments made in DeFi were liquidated appropriately because it followed a protocol and followed the smart contracts that are tied to some of these DeFi loans. So I know Andrew may chime in here, so I'm going to front run that. So smart contracts I think of as agreements that are written in the blockchain that execute automatically. So kind of like how a vending machine will operate. So do you have $1 to buy the candy bar? If yes, you get the candy bar. If not, then you don't. There's no lawyers, no balance sheet audits, no excuses if you're hungry. It's just whether or not you have the dollar. So smart contracts are a really amazing tool for finance because it allows for that sort of arbitration. So DeFi is really an area that I'm hoping to explore later in the future for some additional content. So stay tuned for that.
Very nicely said. I love that. The reason I got into crypto was really because I really wanted people to be able to keep more money in their pocket. And so I am looking forward to more people adopting it for the right reasons and it being able to help them. We are in crypto winter right now, but this is still a new industry. People need to remember that. I spoke at NFT NYC and I said, let's see, it's Bitcoin's about 13, 14 years old, right? I don't know anybody who at 13, 14 knew everything. And so we're currently still learning. And so, when you're 13, 14, you have a parent that tells you what you can and can't do. That would be the regulators. Like, you can and can't do this, right? Whereas banking's been around for hundreds and hundreds of years. They're the grandfather. They're like, we already know. We know we can do this. We know we can't do that. So people just need to think about things that way. We're still learning. We're doing the best that we possibly can. And I really do think that this is going to be the way of the future. Not And I still think that there's room for other things too. This isn't going to be just the end all be all. It's going to be a combination of different things. But I do think that there's room for the industry to grow. We're growing, we're learning, we're growing at an extremely fast pace. And I'm kind of excited for the future.
Brilliant.
And I love that optimism, Emma. I think that's one common thread among those in crypto, is that there is such an optimism and excitement about the future of money and where it's going.
Yeah, I wake up excited every single day. I'm not excited throughout the entire day, but I wake up and I'm thrilled for what's going to happen in the industry. It's a really nice feeling. It's pretty good. It's pretty good.
I mean, this has been a really brilliant conversation. There's been so much that, so many takeaways. So anyone listening to this, there are so many sort of rich takeaways here. But some three sort of high level things that sort of stood out to me. Number one, the future looks bright. The idea, the potential for future disruption is there. I think that's number one. Number two is that this crypto winter has this capacity for sorting out the stronger versus the weaker players. And I wrote down that quote actually from you, Emma. If you can survive the bear market, you're well positioned for the bull market. And I think we're going to see obviously some of those stronger players coming through. And then third, obviously you both spoke so passionately and in such excited and optimistic way about some of this innovation, whether it's related to decentralized finance and smart contracts, or whether it's related to helping consumers and remittances. And it's really going to be about the innovation that comes out of this, where we're going to see sort of the most opportunity and the most growth. Right. Well, so thank you, Emma. Thank you, Biota. Thank you, everybody, for listening. The conversation doesn't end here. Head over to Mintel's LinkedIn and Instagram and let us know what you think. We'd love to hear your thoughts on today's episode and any other episodes you have an opinion on. If you want to know more about Mintel, who we are and what we do, head over to mintel.com and check out our blog for even more insights from our analysts, and sign up to become a member of the free Mintel Spotlight community. We'd love to have you. Make sure you never miss an episode by subscribing on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. So goodbye for now, and we'll catch you next time for a new episode of Little Conversation.